Hello classy people, this is Josh the Top Hat Gamer, and this week I'm reviewing Quantum Break. Remedy Entertainment are certainly no strangers to single-player experiences with quality narratives, with games such as the original Max Payne's and Alan Wake being held in fairly high regard by gamers and critics alike. Quantum Break is not only their first foray into the current generation of gaming, but also the first truly narrative-focused experience exclusive to the Microsoft platforms. So does it meet the high standards Remedy have set in the past? Let's find out. Quantum Break puts players in control of Jack Joyce, a man granted time-based abilities when his best friend's time travel experiment goes horribly wrong and damages the very structure of time itself. As Joyce does everything in his power to stop the end of time, he's forced to contend with his former best friend, Paul Serene, who was thrust back in time during the same incident that gave Jack his powers. As with most time travel stories, Quantum Break features a good dose of timeline tampering and potential paradoxes, and while these are interesting purely by the virtue of time traveling being interesting on its own, the game falls short in a few other areas. Jack Joyce might just be the most bland white dude to ever star in a video game, and while Paul Serene shows promise as an antagonist who makes hard choices for the greater good, his motivations aren't super clear. He states that the end of time can never be stopped, but the game shows that he's never really tried, which seems strange if nothing else. He's just willing to save the special few and sacrifice the many, which just seems like a dick move. Aside from the dull characters, Quantum Break features a number of other problems. After each gameplay section, Quantum Break presents you with a junction point where you can make a decision that will affect the story moving forward. These choices don't seem to actually make a difference on most aspects of the game, though there is some novelty to be found in the fact that you're making these decisions as the antagonist, Paul Serene. On top of that, each act is followed up by a 20 to 30 minute live action show that follows other side stories running parallel to Jack's adventure. The problem with these episodes is that they fill gaps that don't need to be filled, and introduce more bland characters when the main cast could use more time to be developed properly. I'd have personally preferred for Remedy to have focused entirely on delivering a video game with a solid narrative, as opposed to trying and failing to deliver a satisfying game and miniseries at the same time. At the very least, Quantum Break looks good in-game, with some of the best looking character models and faces I've seen in an Xbox One game. You can easily tell who the actors portraying these characters are, and despite the characters being fairly boring, the performances on display are at least serviceable. As I said, the game's visuals are impressive, though this just makes the constant texture loading and weird object bugs stand out more than they usually would. Even Quantum Break's audio feels slightly off. The game features a fairly generic soundtrack until you start pulling out your time powers, which results in awesome synth effects that are slowed down and sped up depending on how you're using your powers. The aspect that sticks with me most, however, is the jarring use of upbeat, licensed tracks at the end of each act, moments that are usually marked by revelations or emotional events. It feels so weird hearing pop rock tracks after plot points that are supposed to have some real weight to them, you know? Speaking of having weight, Quantum Break's overall gameplay has none. At its core, the game is a cover-based shooter, but firing at enemies feels sloppy and unsatisfying as enemies soak up bullets and don't really react to being hit. I'm not even sure I've played a cover-based shooter with such poor cover mechanics before. You just walk up to cover and Jack auto-crouches, but it's far too easy to accidentally step out of cover and into enemy fire. Even if you're crouched behind cover, you can expect to be hit because reasons, I guess. My best guess is that Remedy knew the cover-to-cover gameplay wasn't going to be Quantum Break's specialty, and instead banked on players utilizing Jack's time powers more than anything. They're great for getting out of a tight spot, but few of the abilities are actually that fun to use. Quick dashing into people and knocking them into slow motion is pretty radical, but contrived time-based powers like time vision and time explosions are actually just stupid. What the hell is a time explosion? It certainly doesn't help that Quantum Break only has maybe one or two special enemy types to mix things up for the duration of the game either. To the game's credit, Quantum Break does offer some minor platforming sections to break up the monotonous combat, and these sections force you to use certain time skills to progress. The ideas on display here, such as reversing time to stop a platform from falling, or time dashing through obstacles, shows promise, but the game never capitalizes on these sections. Plus, the game's jumping just feels unresponsive and unenjoyable. My biggest gripe with the game, beyond its middling gameplay and underwhelming narrative, is the amount of content on display. If you take away the unnecessary live-action series, you're left with a game that's maybe 5 hours long. And those 5 hours feel like they're spent listening to exposition or searching for narrative collectibles instead of actually playing a fun game. This is one of those times where I feel far worse about a so-so game than I should. Quantum Break is playable and even features some moments of brilliance, but the way it wastes its potential leaves a bad taste in my mouth. In both its narrative and core gameplay I can see glimmers of something excellent, but nothing is ever capitalized on. Quantum Break gets the Top Hat Gamer rating of bad. As someone who adores time travel stupidity, I can appreciate parts of Quantum Break to some degree, but it drops the ball so hard with regards to its boring characters, inconsistent presentation, and unsatisfying gameplay, that I can't really recommend anyone pick this game up, but at the very least, I hope all of this wasted potential is finally used in the inevitable sequel. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the review informative. If you missed last week's review on Pokken Tournament, click the annotation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go play Alan Wake, because the free digital copy of it is the best thing about Quantum Break.